everyone, and welcome to the CFPA monthly webinar. We have such a great panel discussion planned for you today. We've just got an incredible group of some of the world's great experts on local investing here with us, and a fabulous CFPA moderator. And I'll introduce our moderator in a few minutes, but you do not want to miss this conversation because you're not going to get a better insight on local investing from any group anywhere. So this is going to be a great conversation. Let me just tell you a little bit. A few of you may be new to CFPA, the Crowdfunding Professional Association. It's a national association of people participating in crowdfunding, including the portals, the broker-dealers, but also especially the investors and the issuers who are make up this marketplace. We look out for them. We're interested in making this an efficient, well-run marketplace for their benefit. And a key part of that is education, making sure that investors and issuers have the information they need to be successful in crowdfunding and crowdfund investing. And we take our role seriously. We're passionate. We've got a phenomenal board of a dozen great expert leaders who are participating in leading the organization. My name, by the way, is Devin Thorpe, and I'm the CFPA volunteer president this year. We have a full-time admin, Rose, who helps us out with a lot of things. We're grateful for her. And then a great board. Brian Christie is our vice president. Our secretary is Jenny Casson, and our treasurer is Brian Belay of King's Crowd. We've got just a great team, and the depth of expertise on our board is astounding. Every time we get together, I get nervous because there's so much expertise and power in that room. But you're going to get a taste of that today with the great panel that we've assembled for you today. Every month, we host a webinar like this, and we're excited about today's topic, which, of course, is local investing. But next month, we're going to focus on companies that have successfully raised at least, well, up to the maximum amount of $5 million under regulation crowdfunding. Some of the folks that have done this have done it in a matter of days. And so it really is kind of an exciting topic to think about, because as we think about crowdfunding, I think it's important for us to begin to see the power of crowdfunding. When you can add $5 million to your cap table as a venture-backed enterprise, this matters. This is strategic. This is value add as you bring in more investors who become fans and supporters for your business. It works at scale just like it does for a local business. So I really am excited about next month's topic and hope you'll join us for that. Also, Crowdfunding Professional Association is a co-host for the Super Crowd webinar that will happen next week. And we at the CFPA have a few free tickets to that event. That event normally costs just $10, but we've got some free tickets. I'm going to drop the link into the chat for everyone to get your free CFPA tickets to the Super Crowd webinar next week. That Super Crowd Hour, we call it. Actually, I'll be hosting that one, and I'll be talking about how to make money with investing in for impact in the crowdfunding space. So I hope you'll join us for that. It is now my pleasure to turn the time over to our great moderator, Brian Christie. As I mentioned, Brian is the vice president of the Crowdfunding Professional Association. He's also the CEO and founder of Brainsy. Brainsy provides the technology that underlies the crowdfunding ecosystem on the CFPA website. And if you haven't visited, I encourage you to do that. So he is a successful technology entrepreneur, a deep thinker, and a dear friend. Brian, welcome to the CFPA webinar. Take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Devin. So again, I'm Brian Christie. I am the board member of CFPA, and I have the pleasure of an honor to moderate today's panel. And so let me first give some introductions to the different panelists, then I'll give them each a chance to speak and talk a little bit about their organization. We'll then do some discussion, and at the end, we'll wrap up with some Q&A from the audience. So let me start alphabetically. I'll start with Stephanie Geller. So Stephanie Geller is the founder and director of Community Wealth Builders, an organization dedicated to supporting local, minority, and cooperative businesses in Baltimore. She's also the co-founder and director of the Maryland Neighborhood Exchange, which is the first local grassroots crowdfunding platform. And so here's a fun fact about Stephanie. She loves to hike, and she's usually out hiking at least once every weekend, but the hike has to be followed by ice cream. So Stephanie, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And so next we have Benjamin Lozano. So Ben is the co-founder and CEO of SMBX, which is the world's first business bond marketplace. SMBX connects qualified small businesses with investors in their communities. He was previously a finance professor at UC Santa Cruz and San Francisco State, and also previously held the position of Chief Product Officer for Robinhood Minor Asset Management. Now, here's a fun fact about Ben. He went to school on the West Coast and applied himself in both college and graduate school, especially in the field of surfing. So Ben, thanks for joining us as well. Finally, we have Jen Risley. Jen is the Director of Operations at the American Independent Business Alliance, which is also known as AMIBA. She's the editor of the Main Street Journal, which is a hub for local investing. She's also program manager of the Local Crowd Monadnock, which is a localized rewards-based crowdfunding program for independently owned businesses. Here's a little known fact about Jen. She worked at the Modoc National Wildlife Refuge, which is in the northeastern corner of California, and there she studied sandhill cranes. So welcome everyone, really glad to have you here. Not only are you all have the common thread of being experts in local investing, it seems you all have a great love for the outdoors as well. So glad to have you here. So what I'd like to do first is to give you each a chance really to chat a little bit about your organizations, and just to take a couple minutes to talk about the mission of the organization, what's involved with, and how it's involved with local investment. So we'll start at the top with Stephanie. Why don't you go ahead and take a minute to share with us about your organization.
Okay, well, thank you for that warm introduction, and it is a pleasure to be here today. So I run a nonprofit based in Baltimore, Maryland, which is focused on nurturing community wealth building strategies and programs. And that really means we work to develop and implement, generally in partnership with communities, a whole host of strategies and models that have two sort of related themes. One is they aim to bring power, and the other is that they aim to bring resources back to real people and communities. So our work is very, very place-based. About 5 years ago, actually longer than that, the more we have worked with local businesses in communities, the more apparent it became that lack of capital was just an underlying challenge across the board. And even in Baltimore, there are great local businesses, many minority owned that were existing, that had customers, that were thriving. And even those businesses couldn't access affordable traditional capital. So the key program that we run along those lines is called the Maryland Neighborhood Exchange. And it is, I still think it's really one of the few locally focused grassroots investment crowdfunding like sort of projects that exist across the nation. And we really look at investment crowdfunding as a tool to build community wealth. And we are working across the board really to elevate the profile, to educate people about this. We want regular Baltimoreans to know you can invest in local businesses. We want businesses to know they can access affordable capital this way. And then we want to connect them. And we see this as a really important tool to help more Baltimoreans build individual wealth and to help businesses get affordable capital. So we're sort of been working on both ends of the spectrum.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. That's great. Ben, let me turn to you. Just a couple minutes on your organization and the intersection with local investing. And you're on mute, Ben, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for inviting us down. Thanks to the SFPA and Stephanie and Jen. Pleasure to be on a panel with you. So my name is Ben Lozano, and I'm the CEO and one of 3 co-founders of the SMBX, which stands for the Small and Medium Business Exchange. We don't do equity crowdfunding. We do debt financing for small and medium-sized businesses. It's the one thing we do, and we do it all day. We've done 140 small businesses and $25 million. We've listed 140 small businesses and $25 million worth of small business bonds. The small business bond is the asset class that populates our marketplace. It's just a fancy marketing term for a loan that's issued on our marketplace by qualified businesses who would either go take out bank loans, or in some cases don't qualify for bank loans for whatever reason, or have had trouble accessing debt financing, but are in a position where they're at that inflection point in their business's growth trajectory where they're ready to borrow growth capital and grow the value of their business, hire more workers, pay those workers, and circulate the wealth that happens in a thriving business back through the community. So let's see. I guess the one sort of relevant thing that's been happening lately is we've established some partnerships with different municipalities throughout the United States. We have a partnership with the mayor of Washington, D.C., where the mayor has sort of recognized that we're good at identifying qualified borrowers. We're good at underwriting them. We have a financial technology platform that automates a lot of the investment processes and financial services that take place when you're administering debt and then servicing that debt, and making sure that the investors are able to invest in the businesses. They get the bonds, they lose the bonds and need to get reissued the bonds. They get the monthly principal and interest payments over a 1 or 2 or 5 year period. And so the municipality of Washington, D.C. allocated the SMBX some money that they had earmarked for small businesses, and we 10x that return for them. So we make a promise to list 10 times the amount that the government has given us. And what we're hoping to do is sort of leverage our capacity and our expertise at helping connect qualified local businesses with people who want to invest in them and earn principal and interest monthly in the process of doing it, for the benefit of Washington, D.C. And we just recently launched a partnership with Mercer County, New Jersey, to do something similar. So we've got 4 municipal partnerships now, and we're talking with some other city governments as well. It's not something when we were architecting the SMBX, when we were taking the 2 years to get regulatory approval to operate our small business bond marketplace, when we were making all the mistakes that a startup makes on its way to trying to, jumpstart its marketplace, we had not thought that we would end up with partnerships with local governments. But that's what the market is directing us, among other places. And so it's always interesting in a startup, which is already a humbling exercise anyways, when you discover some traction, or rather traction discovers you. And so that's something that we'll be moving forward with a little bit more into 2023, the end of 2023, 2024 and on. Thanks.
Interesting. So, and we'll come back to both of you with follow-up questions on your business model. And also, I'm curious about how things will scale for each of you. But first, let's go to Jen. Jen, please give us a little bit of background on your organization as well.
Yeah, so I definitely have a different scope than the other speakers. We do rewards-based crowdfunding here in southwestern New Hampshire, along with other hats that I wear. So it's great to see Stephanie. I know I email you a lot and heard you speak a couple times, but it's great to actually interact. So we brought the local crowd, which again is a community-focused rewards-based crowdfunding program that works with not only local businesses, but nonprofits, basically individuals who have a great idea that really leverages the local economy, and we help them launch and be successful in their crowdfunding campaign. So we started in 2017, and we've gotten about almost $500,000 raised for 58 campaigns. So it really is that grassroots initiative that I feel like helps people get to the next level of working with investment crowdfunding. So it's always great to connect the dots and not just be like, oh, rewards-based crowdfunding. Yeah, that's not the same as what we do. I think that it really helps those entrepreneurs think of different alternatives for getting capital for their business.
Jen, just do you want to give people a little primer for those who may be new on the distinctions between rewards and investment crowdfunding?
Yeah. So it's some people know about Kiva or GoFundMe, where you're just giving people money and saying, God bless and go forth. For rewards-based crowdfunding, the way that the local crowd works is that the campaign team can put a reward. So say you give X amount of money and you'll get a dinner with the founder. The difference between our platform is that you can have another business give a reward, which has been really what's worked really well with us because we are so locally based. So we'll have someone we'll have a farmer launch a crowdfunding campaign, and our local coffee roaster will give a gift card to kind of back their campaign. So it is definitely about broadening the community, bringing the community together, learning what each other's really wanting to do, testing the waters, but on a very localized level.
Thank you for that. So let me ask a global question to start with, and this is not geographically global question, but one that goes to everyone. And that is when people are looking at local investing, why should they care? Why does it matter? So just let's start with sort of a high level question before we jump into some of the other details. This is open to anyone who wants to answer it first, but I'd like you to take a shot at it. Sure, please.
So when we talk about local investing, I always like to point to 3 different nodes, sort of like the triple bottom line. And one is, and this is especially important in a city like Baltimore, when so many people have been left out of wealth building opportunities, right? So on the one level, it creates so many accessible ways for people to start building assets. You're not asking someone to study the stock market and learn intricacies. You're really asking people to invest oftentimes as little as $100 in the pizza shop they go to, places where they can talk to the owner. So for us, like one of the important nodes, like this is such an important tool because it helps bring people into just asset building, which is incredibly important, right? We're not going to solve generational poverty. We're not going to raise people's incomes through jobs alone. Like the notion of building assets is critically important. And then the second pillar we talk about, it enables businesses to get capital on their terms, right? So businesses can use this in so many different ways. They can offer equity, they can do revenue sharing, they can have more traditional loans. It is one of the only types of fundraising I know that puts a business in the driver's seat, which is incredibly important, right? If you want to line a business up for success, you need to have a tool that is not cookie cutter, that actually can be crafted by the business owner. And then the third and last pillar we talk about is just the community wealth building effect. If a business gives a small financial stake in its success to a real person, that person is going to be a customer on steroids, right? They're going to shop there, eat there, promote it more. And if we talk about, how can we create a more resilient, sustainable economy, cementing those relationships, I think is a really key part of it.
Do the others of you have any comments? I mean, I hear creating resilient local economies is sort of the last piece of that. The others of you have a view on that as well?
I think it's more just like the return on investment, because we're so localized. It's not just about what that individual is going to get. It's about the bigger community, which is much more abstract when you're talking about national scale or investing in a national business. It's like, and what Stephanie already put out there, it's like they know this person, they see them, they understand where they're coming from, and it's really about, for rewards-based crowdfunding, an opportunity to transform that social capital into personal financing to do what you want to do. So that is like a huge part. And again, the more that that entrepreneur is able to invest in their business, the more that they can then pay other local entrepreneurs and pay their staff and make more jobs. So it's much more tangible to see that impact when it's localized.
Yeah.
Ben,
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I agree, obviously, with everything that Stephanie and Jen are saying in terms of local wealth creation, circulating the wealth back through the community. All that stuff is true. I maybe the one thing I will add is you already actually do invest local. If you store your money in a bank, you are investing local, because the bank takes our money, they lend it out to small businesses and individuals in the form of mortgages and small business loans. The only difference is you don't have a say in who they lend it to or where your unused money is going. So I think the reason why we care about storing our unused money actively when investing local is we actually have a say in where our unused money is going, what kind of world we're building with our unused money. I mean, at the SMBX, that's one of our mottos. We believe that if given the opportunity of deciding what kind of world people want to live in and create with their unused money by investing or not, that they would choose the former. They'd rather decide what kind of world that they're supporting and creating with their unused money. So we do invest local already. It's just a matter of whether we're doing it consciously and deliberately or inadvertently and passively.
I guess there's also some questions out there about when you invest in a bank, as you mentioned, if it's a national bank, some of that money may not necessarily be staying local. So there is an issue with your banking relationships. Ben, you opened up by talking a little bit about the types of businesses that you reach out to. Maybe you could speak to that again with some, and perhaps if you want, go ahead and mention a particular case study or success story that sort of typifies the type of businesses that you're working with. And then I'll go around with each of you and ask the same question as well.
Cool. Let's see. Gosh, there's so many good businesses. I'm like looking down the street because there's like businesses that have listed down the street.
Or even just the type, just a profile type.
Yeah, so we listed a business that was a famous bagel shop in the Bay Area called Boychik Bagels. It's a women-owned entrepreneur who has just kind of gotten the formula right for growth. And she could definitely go borrow from a bank. But if given the opportunity to invite her customers to invest in her business or, not and borrow from a bank, she has decided that she would rather borrow $1 million to grow her bagel to fund her bagel factory in the East Bay. From her Instagram followers, people on her mailing list, people who buy and love her bagels. And when they're eating the bagel, in some ways, when they're buying the bagels, now they're paying back themselves on the loan. So she becomes a more robust business in the process of doing $1 million bond offering. She also gets the capital she needs. She can hire more workers in the East Bay who now have money for bagels themselves. And, you get a growth of the local bagel economy, not to mention the economy in general. Mm-hmm. We have other businesses who come from communities who have historically been underserved by legacy finance and actually can't borrow from a bank, not because they're not good borrowers, not because they don't service the bonds when they pay them back. They just don't check one of those pre-established boxes that a bank has in its mind when it says, here's the folks ahead of time I'm going to decide are qualified to borrow and who are not. And those folks also have been able to raise capital in our marketplace, often new businesses who are getting it right. I didn't mention specific businesses, but that qualifies so many businesses that we do in our marketplace.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. So Jen, you with rewards, I think it's not necessarily companies that are raising $1 million. It's a little smaller in scale, but do you want to talk about sort of your prototypical customer or business that's being served by your platform or?
Yeah, sure. Definitely a smaller scale. but moving its way up. So I thought about Marty, who was one of those entrepreneurs. He's a farmer, and he just didn't want to go to the bank and ask for a loan. So he wanted to grow his business in particular ways, but he just didn't feel comfortable. So he decided to go to us and work on rewards-based crowdfunding. His first campaign with us was to build a barn, post and beam. You know, he had his friends come and do the barn raising, but the actual like wood and everything else that went into it, he needed money. So he was kind of like, oh, that was great. So when COVID happened and there was this huge uptick in the demand for local food, he was all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, I have too many customers and I don't know, you know, I have these products, but I'd have nowhere to store them. I have no, you know, refrigerated place to store them. So he did a really small rewards-based crowdfunding campaign with 5 other businesses to respond to that increased demand for local. And then he came back a year later and he's now writing a book. He's a permaculture farmer. So now he's writing a textbook with his illustrator friend on, you know, what he's learned over the years. So he raised $15,000 to write a book. So again, it's just really fantastic to see people coming back again and again because they have learned that, you know, we're a comfortable place for them, even if, you know, the traditional route doesn't work for them yet. I feel like the traditional route is going to work for them, you know, in another 2 or 3 years.
And before I go to Stephanie, could you speak to a little bit about, you're in New Hampshire, you said, about the community itself in which your platform's operating? Because we know it's not East Bay, which is, you know, big population of Baltimore. So
we're definitely small. Our town, I live in Key, New Hampshire, so there's about 30,000 people in the summer, or in when the school is in session. But overall, it's a pretty small rural community. We service the whole southwest region of New Hampshire, so it's a little bit bigger pool of people, and also work with different parts of New Hampshire and Vermont to try to spread this idea of rewards-based crowdfunding until there are other communities who adopt this, the local crowd. We're kind of here to serve everybody.
That's great. Okay, Stephanie, turn our attention to you and some of the projects that you've done in Baltimore, maybe your typical type sort of client, so to speak, or business that you're serving. And if you want to bring up a specific success story, that'd be great to hear as well.
Yeah, it's always hard for me to talk about typical because there's really not typical. This works well, I think, for businesses where people love them, or a business that wants to open in a community that wants them to come there. So we have worked with close to 90 businesses to date that really span the spectrum from small restaurant to, you know, someone wanting to start a food truck to larger tech companies. And actually, as Jen and Ben were speaking, I thought the example I would give would, just to balance what they said, be a little different. So this isn't really our bread and butter, but a good portion of businesses we work with are businesses that want to test a concept out. So they want to see, you know, if we are going to move forward with this idea, are there people that would buy our product? Are there people that would be excited about this? So we work with a group of relatively young entrepreneurs that were in college, and they had an idea to make a smart golf ball, and they weren't sure. Like, first, they couldn't get money from a bank because they had no credit history, but they wanted to see, could this idea work? Like, would enough people want this technology applied to a golf ball? And they raised over $1 million that way, and it completely, you know, made them realize, yes, great idea, and they have an incredibly interesting startup for those that like golf.
Interesting. Thank you for that. That's so really a whole mixture here of the types of businesses that are served.
And one other thing I'll add, just to add another layer to this, right? Because the cap is now 5 million, it's a little larger. We're increasingly seeing interest, not just among businesses, but among development projects. So, you know, a developer who wants to get community buy-in, or a developer that wants the community to recognize that he or she cares about the community, will add some type of crowdfunding to their capital stack to get community investors involved as well.
So it's an interesting point you make about how this is being seen as an opportunity to, and each of you mentioned this, to really cement ties with the local community and to serve sort of other purposes. What would you say to folks who may be critics of local investing, in the sense that they say, well, the risk profile is different, or it's not as the same as putting something directly into another instrument? Do you have a perspective on that, or?
Well, I mean, in the case of SMBX, we have 3 years of loan performance that shows that the borrowers on our marketplace overwhelmingly service their bonds. We've been sitting at historically 1% loss given default rates the entire time, and we hope to stay there. That's what we're modeling for. I would say the one thing that, now I'm speaking not as the CEO of SMBX, but just as an advocate of crowdfunding more generally, the one thing that crowdfunding has going for it that private debt borrowing or private equity raising doesn't have going for it is that there's this kind of like marketing pop you get. There's the galvanization of the community. In our case, when the business is paying back the principal and interest on the bond, every month on the same day, an investor gets pinged on their phone, reminding them of the existence of the business that just paid them back. And now that business is aware, that investor is aware that they have more money to go buy from that business than they had before. So I would just, argue that actually the act of a public marketplace model of capital raising is superior in that it galvanizes the community around the business more than if they were to raise in private.
And I think it also sort of cements people into the ownership class in a way that they couldn't have access to in the past. So that's another. Ben, you mentioned early on that you were going from one municipality to another. So is that going to be your model for sort of scaling what you do? Is that sort of the model, your cookie cutter approach to building out your business?
We do businesses that are based in the municipalities where we have partnerships with those governments, but we do a lot of, we're in 50, 60 different cities and do a lot outside of those. So wherever businesses are growing and want to engage their customer base to raise capital, debt financing, we'll go. We're not sort of shying away from areas. We do see that there are certain communities that just get really excited about investing in businesses in their community. And so we do have stronger presences there. We're big in and around Portland. I don't know, the Portlandiers, love investing in some local businesses. There's some communities in New York that are really big. Not necessarily Manhattan, right? Smaller communities where folks really love their businesses. We're big in Oakland because that's our home base, and folks more so even than San Francisco, although San Francisco loves its communities, businesses as well. Oakland folks really love their businesses. So I wouldn't say that that's our path to scalability, but I will say this: I have a Reg CF funding portal license. My entire business model is made possible by Reg CF. I am, a proud member of the SFPA and am on panels when Devin and you all are good enough to invite
CFPA. So
what did I say?
You said SFPA, but that's okay.
Yeah, apologies. I need a better night's sleep. So it's nothing. It's not the act of crowdfunding that I would call question two is we're really trying to build a small business capital marketplace. So for me, the scalability is based on identifying what exists in current capital markets, but for large corporations, public corporations, and pulling that model and twisting it and turning it and evolving it so it's capable of handling small businesses. We believe in small businesses. We think the world is better when the world is populated by small businesses. We recognize the value that small businesses have to the fabric of our nation. So we want to do whatever we can to facilitate small business growth. And so what we would like to do is, ideally scale the marketplace through traditional capital markets means, not not always individually crowdfunding these things. So for instance, imagine if you could, invest $100 into 1,000 women-owned businesses? Or what if you invest in the Black-owned small business bond mutual fund comprised of 10,000 or 100,000 businesses driven by Black entrepreneurs? For us, that's the kind of thing we're going for long term, because we want to give as many people in the United States, who frankly all are based in some local place somewhere, the ability to invest in small business in their communities. So I would steer away from non-scalable things and really try and go more the capital markets route if possible, to perform our mission.
So interesting. Jen, you mentioned that what you're doing is in New Hampshire right now, and also spill over into, I think, Vermont as well. So do you see the model that you have as one that can be replicated in other localities? Are you developing, and is that your sort of goals to create the grassroots sort of platform that you have that can be sort of picked up and put elsewhere?
But we're actually benefiting from that already. So the Local Crowd Cooperative is actually based in Wyoming, Laramie, Wyoming. So they came up with this model. We started with them when they were doing feasibility studies and getting a lot of, funding from the government. We were one of those early adopters who saw the potential in our community, but now they're kind of like, okay, how do we get more buy-in from smaller communities like ours? And they're realizing that it takes a lot of, local champions, as well as a lot of organizations to help build that ecosystem approach to local investing, which, they know what needs to happen. So they're there to, embrace anyone that, I benefit from. There's an online platform that has a classroom. So all of the businesses that come to me and want to do a crowdfunding campaign, I kind of hear if what they're envisioning is in line with our community's master plan. And then we say, sure, come on board. We've already paid for this platform, and there's a process that we lead them through. Usually it takes 2 to 3 months. So they're like, well, why would I go with you? I can just, launch something tomorrow on X platform. But it really is, this is someone on the ground who could help you think about your why, help you make sure that you're not only ready to launch, but finish your campaign and deliver what you said you were going to do. So all of that model is really turnkey, at least in my mind. So it's kind of ripe and ready for other communities who want to do it to go to the Local Crowd and sign up.
Sign up and do the same thing. So you're saying that's
Yep.
part of you're already part of a cooperative of some sort. So
That's right. Yep.
others who wanted to represent a geography somewhere else could go to the same cooperative. And if there's not someone already operating, they could get the toolkit, so to speak.
Yep. Get the infrastructure, and you don't have to start from scratch.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. Because a lot of it is like the businesses I work with, they know what they want to do, but it could be as simple as like, how do I log in? How do I connect my, my own bank account to this? So there's someone that can go, here, I can actually log in on the back end and help you, through the whole process.
The
Those personal relationships. Yep.
Interesting. So, Stephanie, you're in Baltimore as your focus now. Is your increased impact and reach going to come from just getting more businesses in Baltimore that are involved, or is this eventually going to be something state of Maryland? I mean, what is sort of the sort of plan longer term for you all?
Well, I should say we work with businesses across Maryland, but our focus is Baltimore City, because that is the most underserved region. And I think this works well because I've been working in Baltimore for decades and have the relationships we need. What we do, this focus on the local level, really requires a type of trust between business. There's a lot of relationships and a lot of groundwork, and the model can't easily be translated without working with partners like that. So we do work across Maryland, but the majority of our work is in Baltimore. I wish we could focus on how to scale. So one challenge we have is we remain a very skeleton nonprofit entity. Baltimore is a city that has a lot of challenges, violence being number one, gun violence, death, murder, drugs, poverty. And this does, because we provide free technical assistance to any local business that wants to do this, and because we are so hands-on, this does require grant funding. And in this space in Baltimore, getting dollars to support something that is focused on community economic development, that's out of the box and that's long term, not immediate, right? We're not giving family food today. We're not giving a child school supplies for this school year. It's been really hard. So we are more focused on just surviving and trying to come up with a business model that works. I feel like we have so many dreams for the program. I wish we, it's despite our doing this for 2.5 years, so many businesses in Baltimore don't know that this is a tool. So many local residents, right? They love Baltimore. They want to support local business. They don't know they can invest in local businesses. So even getting basic resources for like marketing would be like immensely helpful. That being said, I believe in this tool. I think our project has demonstrated, even with a shoestring budget, you can make this work, right? We've worked with close to 90 businesses, close to $6 million from 13,000 small investors. I went we are more than like everything we do is transparent. I want other communities to see what we're doing. We would love to partner with others to make it possible there. We actually have a contract now with Ithaca, New York. Ben mentioned that communities, how they love businesses. And we have gotten that because has sort of been my second home. Like I know Ithaca well, I know the businesses, so it makes sense. And, I feel like Baltimore, we're aiming to get up off the ground, but it doesn't negate the fact we want to be a resource to other communities that want to tap this logic model. Because I think it pains me that more places aren't using grassroots investment crowdfunding really as a community wealth building tool.
You mentioned that there are 13,000 small investors who have participated. Do you have a sense of how many of them actually are from the local area versus could be from all over?
Yeah, so it varies, and COVID made it a little different because a lot of businesses with which we work actually began to sell their products, like small bakeries or we work with this amazing woman who makes peanut brittle. They opened their markets to the nation with online stores to stay operational. So their customers,
hard to say because the customers are everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really, I think it's sort of a misleading thing because we do have businesses reach out to their customers. But in general, I would say around 2/3 come from our region.
Now, Ben had mentioned something about getting, I guess, matching funds from some of the municipalities for some of the investments, as I understood it. And so do you think, Stephanie, that there would be there could be an opportunity if local pension funds or local entities said, hey, we really want this area to thrive, so we'd love to set up a pooled fund that actually matches whatever the crowd decides.
In theory, it sounds amazing. And I have to say, we have foundations in Baltimore that say we care about growing Black businesses, or we care about the zip code. And we have said to them, great, set up a fund, a matching fund for every dollar that's invested in a business on our platform that meets your criteria, the fund can double it. And we have not found any appetite for that. It seems like, at least here locally, our foundations, etc., like grants, they're used to grants, they're designed to make grants, and innovative thinking like that crosses the line has been very difficult. We've actually spent 1.5 years in conversations with different entities trying to set those types of things up, and we haven't had any success. But I think theoretically it seems like a really great idea.
And do you think that the barrier has been one of just no one's done it first, or are there actual sort of policy or mechanism or other sort of structural barriers that prevent that sort of relationship from happening?
The other side claims there are structural barriers that, attorneys would be worried about how this fits. We personally do not see great validity in some of their arguments.
I see. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. It's sort of an area to be explored, it seems, where foundations and others could potentially multiply and amplify impact. For Jen, for what you're doing, it sounds like you benefit from plugging into this cooperative. But are there things that that could be helpful for you to sort of have a bigger impact? I mean, if you could, what's your wish list in terms of things that if you had, it would help you sort of amplify the impact that you're already having on the ground?
Yeah, I think it's more awareness of investment crowdfunding in our community, because that is something very novel. I know our Economic Development Corporation bought into, like, they were one of our initial partners for the local crowd Monadnock, but they pulled back because they thought, oh, this was going to be investment crowdfunding, and they have funding that they want to, like, more of the matching challenge opportunity that they wanted to put into it, but they weren't as interested in the donation model. But I think it just took time for people to realize what rewards-based crowdfunding could look like, with this community rewards opportunity and with matching challenges also part of the platform. And I was looking at what Vince was asking, and not quite, I was reading all of his question, but I think the one opportunity as well that we've just been able to start to manifest is that we have a local food co-op, that has patronage, that has loans. So they're actually the host for the local crowd Monadnock. So as they kind of see what we're doing, they see this opportunity for, like, wow, we can actually invest in our local vendors, those farmers who are, we might have given grants to, but what would happen if we did crowdfunding or investment crowdfunding too? So I think it is just the evolution of this platform with what's actually out there, and obviously more time. That's the big thing. Just too few hours in the day to do this great work.
So awareness is a big piece of it, as you mentioned. It sounds like for both of you. How about you, Ben? In terms of if you had a wish list of things you could change that you think would have a material impact and amplify your business or the opportunity of what you're doing, what were those things that you'd like to see happen?
At the regulatory level, or just
whether regulatory or just from a business perspective, or?
Well, from a regulatory level, since I asked that question, that's what I thought maybe you were asking. So I'll answer that one. I think that they should make investing in Reg C offerings tax-free. That should be investing in local businesses. You should get a tax break from it, the same way you do investing in government bonds. I think that would be a barrier that would be, with a stroke of the pen, Congress could eliminate sending out 1099s and taxing people for investing in their local businesses, the same way you do a local government. And I think that would greatly help it. I think there's room for improvement in Reg CF more generally. I'm not wild about any individual who does a Reg CF offering, whether it's equity or debt, over $124,000, having to pay for a financial review that, depending on where you are, can run you as low as $4 or $5K, but probably more like 20 or 30. That doesn't seem right. And it forces people's hand to either decide to invest, to raise more than maybe they need or less than they need. And I don't think that that's in the spirit of the rules.
Yeah, and I think on the tax-free, there are some IRS rules that allow for some qualified startup businesses to have some tax-free, which doesn't apply across the board to Reg CF, but for those Reg CF companies that are startups, they can take advantage of some of the IRS rules. I don't have off the top of my head which part of the code that is, but there is some information on the crowdfunding ecosystem about that.
Yeah, but to Stephanie's point, I mean, if I can interpret what Stephanie was saying, if there was incentive structures around the government that enveloped a pension fund or the portfolio manager of, a retirement fund, just those small incentives to invest more, then you would be looking at them more motivated to try and find ways to troubleshoot the things that they ostensibly think could prevent them from making a direct investment through crowdfunding. So, this
or
is
into crowdfunding pools that put money into crowdfunding, right? In terms of, because we all know pension funds can put money into a VC, right?
They do.
As an LP, right? And so why not put it into some matching fund or pool that gets matched to a platform too?
Yeah.
So
institutional deals they take a long time to close, and it's an exercise in patience, and it's an exercise in just not giving up until eventually you find one person to eat the tiniest, smallest slice of pizza. Because everyone loves the smell of pizza. No one wants to eat the first slice. But once someone eats the first slice, then everyone's asking how you can bake more pizzas. Right. And then you can put whatever toppings you want on it. And now I've lost the metaphor, but it sounded right.
Sorry, as a pizza lover, I like the metaphor. So now Vince asked the question, can Stephanie show the success of Ben's DC partnership to convince Baltimore government of the benefit of supporting local crowdfunding? Is there a model there, Stephanie? You think that
if only it was that easy? And actually, like, working with Ithaca demonstrates there are some governments that are very easily accessible and don't have the types of problems. Baltimore is a very cash-strapped city. We are this hole, like the donut hole in the middle of a donut. Most people have moved to Baltimore County, which is a separate tax base. We have 30% of the land here that's controlled by nonprofits. We don't even have like regular recycling service anymore here. That was stopped during COVID. So there's just a host of problems. The government is really not going to be a partner in long-term strategies in the foreseeable future. It would be delightful to engage them. This project is it's working, and what Ben is doing is great. I've talked to Ben and their team, and it's, Baltimore is a challenging needle to move, but perhaps we'll partner in our emerging work in Ithaca, New York. And that's one thing when you talk about visibility, right? I always think about the campaigns like over a decade ago that got people to recognize just buy local. And now, of course, everybody knows buy local. And I feel like nationally, I just like envision, right, like these billboards everywhere and this like really catchy jingle that will get just people to know invest local. And we really need to change, it's not even change mindsets, it's open people's eyes to the fact they can do this and why they should, and excite them about it.
No, I think that's wonderful. I would hope that at some point in the future, sooner than later, that is very much in people's front and center of their minds, that when they make investment decisions, I want to allocate some part of my portfolio to local investing. And so, well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. I do want to give you each a chance to maybe give folks in the audience or others the chance to refer them to either a book or some organization a book that you've read that really you think is helpful about local investing, or maybe some other organization. You can't mention your own organization, that's a rule, that you think is a useful one for people to look to learn more about the impact, how to have an impact with local investment. So again, pick which one. It can be a book or something to read, or an organization others could go to look to. But go around and give you each a chance to answer on that. And I'll start at the bottom of my screen with you, Ben. A book and organization that people could look to.
Am I at the bottom? Because see, you're to the left of me. So
okay, well, on my screen you're at the bottom, so I'm working my way up.
So as a former product builder, a book that I found really helpful is a book, and as a company creator, with a message and a mission and language we use to explain the novelty of what we're doing to folks, which is totally obvious. It's not like we're doing anything novel. It's just, it feels that way to folks. Is a book by a guy named Yu Kai Chow. who wrote a book called Actionable Gamification. And I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the gamifications theory where everything's like points, leaderboards, and badges and things like that, because some of that can get pretty silly and not helpful. But he boils down all motivation to perform human action down to like 8 core drives. Epic meaning and calling, empowerment of creativity, and then there's some black hat techniques as well. A lot of motivation to perform human desire actions can boil down into white and black hat techniques. And I would just say, if this idea of is like Stephanie was saying, like, it's not even changing folks' mindset. It's just like inviting them into doing something that, if they know they can do it, will be obvious that they want to do. And I wonder if maybe crowdfunding would benefit from adopting some of the more sort of consciously deliberate marketing and motivating behavioral tactics that other startups have adopted when radically changing human behavior. You have millions of people that never took cabs, and now they drive Ubers. Okay. You have millions of people that didn't even know they had a problem at not going to their local motel, who are now renting out their couches at Airbnb. Like, if those things that have such major behavioral changes can take such root with such billions of dollars of capital moving in those companies and into these industries, that they're not just like capturing, but expanding. Surely we can do something like that.
So sounds like you're throwing down the gauntlet a bit for us then, in terms of the industry.
Trying to be engaging. Right?
No, that's great. That's great. And the book is Actionable Gamification. Is that what?
I think so. Yukai Chao, Octalysis methodology is his methodology. So It's a great book. It was written a few years ago, but he does this in-depth study of all games. And then he boils down these 8 core drives and says, like, if you want to induce people to do things that, frankly, like their own best interest, like getting people to take their medicine, when they have, some congenital, illness, is a good thing. So are you manipulating them? Yeah, maybe, but you're also getting them to perform this action that radically helps their lives. So
that's good.
He kind of gets secularist about it, if I can put it in those terms. And if we start to think about things that way, we may be onto something.
That's great. Thank you for that recommendation. Jen, I'll take it to you next. Something people can read, or an organization they should look into. Not
right. Own. It's hard because I wear so many hats and have a lot of jobs, because no one organization is going to be able to pay the bills. But just thinking about what Stephanie said about connecting the dots between buying local and investing local, and even banking local, which we also talked about. That's something that the American Independent Business Alliance is working on. We have this huge group of people who are really excited about buying from their local grocer, but the new opportunity to invest locally is really untapped. So I think the more of us who are working together, we actually have a month-long campaign in April that Stephanie's been a part of, called Move Your Money. So definitely invite you all to tap into that, and we'll be stronger together.
And what's the organization that they should look into?
That's the American Independent Business Alliance, amoeba.net.
Amoeba, right. Okay, great. So people can look into that. Thanks for that recommendation. And then, so Stephanie, do you have a book or an organization that you point people
Funny,
to?
I wasn't going to say this because I thought Jen was going to say this, but I feel like I have to give Michael Schumann credit, because he was really, when he helped form the Maryland Neighborhood Exchange, he has written so many books about local investing. And then when I thought Jen was going to say this, I was going to put out then the Democracy Collaborative. And I think I think lots of people are talking about crowdfunding and investment crowdfunding as a tool to help businesses get capital, but they're not really looking at this as a tool that can transform communities. And what I love about the Democracy Collaborative is that their work is really at the systems level and helping people recognize sort of the fact that if we don't have completely different tools and new ways of doing things, we're not going to generate new outcomes. So I feel like everything they write, everything they talk about is really grounding and important for the type of system hat you need to embrace this at at its most transformative level.
That's great. And I see Devin's come on, so he's probably going to tell us the time is up. And thank you so much, everyone. I'd encourage you again to look into cfpa.org to learn more about crowdfunding, or the crowdfundingecosystem.com. Been a great panel. Devin, do you want to finish up with closing comments?
Let me just reiterate the appreciation you're expressing. I thank all of you on the panel. Brian, you did a great job moderating a fabulous discussion. Stephanie, Jen, and Ben, we're thrilled to have had you today. Thank you for your insights. Appreciate your authentic, genuine insights and the information you brought. I want to thank everyone who attended today. We've had a great audience. We will make the recording available. So ultimately, millions upon millions of people will view this amazing session, and it will change the world. So thanks, everybody, for being a part of it.